My parents insulted me in front of their rich guests and called my husband nothing more than a toolbox man. They laughed like we were beneath them, until he opened his silver case and revealed he was the man holding the power to stop my father's biggest deal. My name is Elora Vance, and I am 32 years old. 3 weeks ago, I sat near the coat room at my father's retirement dinner while 130 people laughed at my husband. My mother was standing on a small stage under silver lights, smiling like she had just told the sweetest family joke in the world. She pointed her champagne glass toward my husband, Kellen, and said, "Every family needs someone useful. Sterling built a medical device company. Holland will lead it. Elora comforts people in waiting rooms. And Kellen, bless him, probably knows where the toolbox is." The room laughed. My father smiled. My sister lifted her glass like she was enjoying a private victory. And my husband, the man they had treated like a low-level repairman for 4 years, slowly stood up with a silver hard-shell case in his hand. By the time he opened that case, my father's $48 million hospital contract was frozen, my sister's perfect promotion was gone, and my mother finally understood that the man she mocked as a toolbox guy had been protecting the hospitals my father was trying to sell to. Before I tell you how one retirement dinner changed everything, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. And if you enjoy emotional family drama with a strong ending, please like and subscribe, because what happened that night did not start at the dinner. It started years earlier, when my family decided that my life was too small to respect. My father, Sterling Vance, built Vance Meridian devices in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, from a rented warehouse with cracked windows into one of the most respected emergency medical equipment companies in the Midwest. His company made hospital carts, emergency battery systems, mobile supply stations, and other machines people only notice when something goes wrong. He used to say, "Hospitals trust us because we never fail under pressure." That sentence was printed on company brochures, glass walls, coffee mugs, and even the napkins at his retirement dinner. My father loved pressure. He loved numbers, contracts, awards, and public praise. He believed people were measured by what they built, what they earned, and how many important people answered when they called. My younger sister, Holland, fit perfectly into his world. She had sharp suits, smooth hair, a marketing degree, and the kind of smile that looked good beside a company logo. By 29, she was brand strategy director at Vance Meridian Devices, and everyone knew my father was preparing to make her the future face of the company. I was different, and in my family, different meant disappointing. I worked as a patient family advocate at a children's rehabilitation hospital on the west side of Milwaukee. My job was not glamorous. I sat with parents while doctors explained hard news. I helped families understand insurance forms, therapy plans, discharge papers, and equipment instructions. I found interpreters. I called social workers. I helped mothers who were too tired to ask questions and fathers who were too scared to cry. I spent my days with children learning to walk again, children learning to use their hands again, children learning that their bodies had changed but their lives were not over. To me, that work mattered. To my parents, it was something soft and unclear, something people did when they could not handle real responsibility. My mother, Marceline, once asked me at brunch, "So you basically hold people's hands?" I told her sometimes holding a hand was the only reason someone made it through the worst hour of their life. She smiled, patted my arm, and said, "That is sweet, honey. Very sweet." She said sweet the way some people say useless. I met Kellen Rook during a power outage drill at the hospital. He was standing in the equipment room wearing a gray jacket, work boots, and a badge I barely looked at. He was checking emergency carts, testing battery backups, and asking questions nobody else asked. While other people rushed through the drill like it was an annoying box to check, Kellen stayed behind and watched how nurses actually moved around the equipment. He noticed that one cart was hard to turn near a narrow doorway. He noticed that the alert sound was too soft near the physical therapy wing. He noticed that a mother holding a sleeping child could not read the small instruction panel from the side. I remember thinking he was unusually thoughtful for a repair technician. Later that day, I found him in the cafeteria drinking black coffee and writing notes on a folded napkin. I sat 2 tables away because the cafeteria was crowded. He looked up and said, "You were the one who told the nurse not to use technical language with Mr. Albright." I said yes, he said. That was the smartest thing I heard all morning. That was the first time a man had ever looked at my work and seen intelligence instead of softness. For the first few months, I believed Kellen worked in hospital equipment repair. He never corrected me directly. He said he worked with device safety, and I filled in the blanks myself. He drove an old truck, wore plain clothes, lived in a simple apartment near Bayview, and never once talked about money. We had coffee after my shifts, took walks near Lake Michigan when the wind was too cold for normal people, and ate takeout on his living room floor because his table was always covered in sketches and test reports. He listened when I talked about families at the hospital. Not polite listening, not waiting for his turn listening. Real listening. Once I told him about a little girl named Brielle who screamed every time a machine beeped because the sound reminded her of the night of her accident. Kellen grew quiet. 2 weeks later, he asked me whether hospitals ever tested equipment sounds with pediatric patients in mind. I told him I had no idea. He looked away and said, "They should." I did not know then that comments like that were not casual. He was carrying them into rooms I had never seen. When I brought Kellen to meet my family, my mother looked at his hands first. They were clean, but not soft. My father asked what he did, and Kellen said, "I work in medical device safety." My father nodded with the polite boredom he reserved for parking attendants and distant cousins. "So, repair side?" he asked. Kellen paused for a moment, then said, "Something like that." I should have corrected the assumption, but I honestly did not know enough to correct it. And after that first dinner, the label stuck. To my family, Kellen became the machine guy, the man who fixed things, the man who probably came through the service entrance. They never asked him a real question again. At Thanksgiving, when Holland announced a partnership with a private hospital group, my father stood up and toasted her as the future of Vance Meridian. I mentioned that one of my patients, a 12-year-old boy named Mateo, had taken his first steps with braces after months of therapy. My mother smiled without looking at me and said, "That is lovely, Elora, but tonight we are talking about real progress." Kellen's fork stopped halfway to his plate. I shook my head slightly, silently asking him to let it go. He did, because he loved me. That became the pattern. At my father's company holiday party, Holland introduced Kellen to 2 executives by saying, "This is Elora's husband. He fixes hospital machines, I think." One of the men laughed and asked if Kellen changed batteries. Kellen smiled and said, "Sometimes batteries matter more than people think." They laughed again because they thought he was making a small joke. I heard something different in his voice, but I did not understand it yet. At a family brunch in February, Holland looked at Kellen's navy blazer and said, "Nice. Did Elora pick that out, or do repair guys have formal uniforms now?" My father chuckled into his coffee. My mother told Holland not to be rude, but she was smiling when she said it. The worst part was not even the insult. It was the way everyone expected me to accept it. If I reacted, I was sensitive. If I stayed quiet, they called it peace. But silence was not peace. It was me paying the price so everyone else could stay comfortable. The clearest wound happened 2 months before the retirement dinner. Our hospital held a small fundraiser for a new family support room. Nothing fancy. Folding chairs, donated cookies, a short speech from our rehab director, and drawings from children taped to the walls. I invited my parents and Holland. I told them it would mean a lot to me. My father said he had a board dinner. My mother said she was exhausted. Holland said she had a campaign photo shoot for the Meridian Pulse cart, the new emergency hospital cart my father planned to launch before retirement. That same night, I saw their photos online. My father in a dark suit, my mother in pearls, Holland standing beside the product with her hand on the handle like she had personally invented it. The caption said, "Innovation with Heart." I stared at that phrase for a long time because it sounded like something I had written in one of my patient care notes. But I told myself I was being dramatic. I always told myself that when my family hurt me, it was easier than admitting they knew exactly what they were doing. The retirement dinner was supposed to be my father's final victory lap. It was held at the Alderwick Grand Hotel, an old lakefront building with tall windows facing Lake Michigan. The ballroom had dark blue velvet chairs, silver table numbers, white roses, and a stage glowing under soft lights. The company logo, Vance Meridian Devices, was projected behind the podium in clean white letters. Hospital buyers, medical executives, board members, investors, city donors, and family friends filled the room. My father wanted the night to celebrate 38 years of leadership, but everyone knew there was another reason for the event. He was expected to announce the Northlake Medical contract, a $48 million deal that would place the Meridian Pulse cart across a network of hospitals in 3 states. He would retire as a legend. Holland would step forward as the next public leader, and the Vance name would look untouchable. That was the plan. At least, that was their plan. Kellen and I arrived at 7:15. I wore a deep green dress I had owned for years, and Kellen wore a charcoal suit that fit him better than anything my family had ever noticed. In his right hand, he carried a silver hardshell sample case. It was sleek but plain, with 2 black latches and no label. I asked him in the car what was inside. He looked at the hotel entrance for a long moment and said, "Something I hope I do not have to open." My stomach tightened. "Kellen, what does that mean?" He kissed my hand and said, "It means I am still hoping they choose kindness before truth has to do the work." I did not understand him, and maybe I was afraid to ask more. At the ballroom entrance, my mother air-kissed my cheek and looked past me at the case. Her smile sharpened. "Kellen, did you bring tools to a retirement dinner?" she asked. Holland, standing beside her in a silver dress, laughed softly. "Mom, be nice. Maybe Dad ordered maintenance." Kellen only said, "Not tools, just something I may need." Our seating card read, Elora Vance and Kelly Rook. Kelly, not Kellen. Rook was correct at least, but somehow that made it worse. We were seated at table 16 near the coat room, far from the stage and even farther from the family table. Every few minutes, someone brushed past my chair with a coat, a camera bag, or a tray of empty glasses. Holland was at the front with my parents, directly under the company logo. I looked at the room and felt that old familiar burn behind my eyes. Kellen placed the silver case beside his chair and touched my wrist. "We can leave," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No. If I leave, they get to say I was jealous, or fragile, or dramatic." He nodded, but his jaw tightened. My mother came by once before the speeches and leaned down close enough that her perfume made my throat sting. "Please don't talk too much about hospital feelings tonight," she whispered. "These are serious people." I wanted to ask her if frightened parents and injured children were not serious people. Instead, I folded my hands under the table and said nothing. Halfway through the salad course, a man at the front table kept turning around to look at Kellen. He was broad-shouldered, gray-haired, and serious in the way powerful buyers often are. I recognized him from my father's conversation at Christmas. Brenner Holt, Senior Purchasing Director for Northlake Medical Network. He was one of the most important people in the room. I saw him lean toward my father and whisper something. My father laughed, then pointed vaguely toward our table. Brenner did not laugh. He looked at Kellen again, slower this time, as if he was trying to place a face from a meeting he had missed. Kellen noticed but did not react. He simply took a sip of water. I leaned close and whispered, "Do you know him?" Kellen said, "Not personally." "Then why is he staring?" Kellen's eyes stayed on the stage. "Because your father invited people who are waiting for my answer." A cold line moved down my back. "What answer?" Before he could respond, the lights dimmed and my father walked to the podium. My father had always known how to own a room. He stood tall under the lights with his silver hair, polished watch, and calm executive smile. 38 years ago, he began, I started Vance Meridian Devices with 2 employees, 1 borrowed truck, and a belief that hospitals deserved equipment they could trust under pressure. The crowd applauded. He spoke about long nights, early failures, discipline, growth, and the sacred responsibility of serving medical professionals. If you had never met him, you would have believed every word came from humility. I knew better. My father loved service when it made him admired. He loved patients when they appeared in marketing videos. He loved hospitals when they signed contracts on time. Then his voice warmed as he turned toward Holland. My younger daughter, Holland, has my mind for business and my hunger for victory. She understands the future of this company. She understands image, strategy, and leadership. And tonight, I am proud to say she will be stepping into a larger role as we prepare for the next chapter. Holland stood, pretending to be surprised, while the room applauded. Then my father looked toward me. The light did not reach our table well, so I was sure half the room had to turn around to see who he meant. "And my oldest daughter, Elora," he said, pausing just long enough to make my stomach twist, "chose a quieter road." A few people smiled politely. "She has always cared more about feelings than figures, more about comfort than competition." He gave a soft chuckle, inviting the room to join him. Some did. Not every child is built for leadership. Some are built for comfort. And I suppose hospitals need comfort too. My face went hot. Kellen's hand closed around mine under the table. I could feel the strength in his fingers, controlled but angry. My father lifted his glass. "To family, in all its forms." People raised their glasses. I did not. I sat still, with my heart beating so hard I could hear it above the applause. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. My mother stood from the front table and floated to the stage like she had been waiting for her cue all night. "Sterling, darling, before you sit down, let me say one thing as the woman who watched you build this life." My father stepped aside, smiling. My mother took the microphone with both hands. She was beautiful in a pale gold dress, every hair in place, every cruel word wrapped in silk. "A family like ours is not easy to build," she said. "It takes strength, patience, and a sense of humor." She turned her head toward our table. "And heaven knows we have needed humor. Elora has always had a soft heart. She comforts families, reads forms, brings tissues, and somehow calls that a career. Laughter rose from the front tables first, then spread. My chest tightened so sharply I could not breathe. My mother smiled wider. And Kellen, bless him, works with equipment. We are still not sure exactly what he does, but every family needs a man who can find the toolbox. The room laughed harder. Holland lifted her champagne glass and called out, loud enough for everyone near the stage to hear, "Careful, Mom. He might charge us overtime." Another wave of laughter moved through the ballroom. Someone near us actually clapped. I looked down at my plate because I could not look at Kellen. Shame is strange when it comes from your own family. It does not feel like anger at first. It feels like you have been pushed out of your own skin. I wanted to disappear, but I also wanted to stand on my chair and scream that my work mattered, that my husband mattered, that we were not props in their little performance. I did neither. I sat frozen. Then the chair beside me moved. Slowly, quietly. Kellen stood up. The silver case was in his right hand. I grabbed his sleeve and whispered, "Please don't." He looked down at me, and his face softened. "I let them laugh at me," he said. "I won't let them laugh at the work you do." He walked toward the stage. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. The kind of walk that makes people stop talking because they know the person walking is not confused. Heads turned. My mother's smile stiffened. My father lowered his glass. Holland rolled her eyes, but I saw uncertainty flicker behind it. Kellen reached the stage and stood beside the podium. My father leaned toward the microphone with a tight laugh. "Son, this is not really the time." Kellen looked at him. "It became the time when your family turned my wife into a joke." The laughter died so quickly the room seemed to lose air. My mother stepped back as if his calmness frightened her more than shouting would have. My father's face hardened. "This is a private family matter." Kellen looked out at the guests, the investors, the hospital buyers, the photographers, the board members. "No," he said. "Your wife used a microphone. Your daughter joined in. Your guests laughed. That made it public." My father tried to take control again. "Kellen, I understand you may feel embarrassed." Kellen set the silver case on a small table beside the podium. The sound of it touching the wood was not loud, but everyone heard it. "I am not embarrassed," he said. "I am disappointed. There is a difference." Holland stepped forward from the front table, her voice sharp. "Oh, come on. This is Dad's retirement dinner. Do not make this about you and Elora's little feelings." Kellen looked at her, not angry, almost tired. "You keep saying little. Little feelings. Little career. Little life. That is the problem with this family. If something does not come with a title, a contract, or a press release, you think it has no weight." My mother's cheeks flushed. "That is enough." Kellen opened the first latch on the case. "Not yet." He turned back to the microphone. "My name is Kellen Rook," he said. "Not Kelly. Not the toolbox man. Not the machine guy. Not the man you keep placing near service doors because you think quiet means unimportant." A murmur moved through the room. Brenner Holt was already standing now, his face pale with recognition. Kellen continued. "I am the founder and chief safety designer of Rookline Safety Labs." The room changed. It did not explode. It shifted. People looked at one another. Phones came out. Someone whispered the company name from table to table. My father blinked once, then twice, as if his brain rejected the words. Brenner Holt spoke before anyone else could. "Sterling," he said slowly, "Rookline is the independent lab holding your final safety approval." My mother turned toward my father. What does that mean?" My father did not answer. He was staring at Kellen like he had never seen him before, which was the truth. In 4 years, he had never really seen him at all. Kellen opened the second latch and lifted the lid of the case. Inside were organized documents, a small black drive, and a thick report clipped with red tabs. No tools, no wires, no screwdriver. Just paper powerful enough to silence a room full of people who had laughed too soon. Kellen removed the first document and held it up. "This is the final approval form for the Meridian Pulse Cart," he said. "Your company has been waiting 6 months for my signature." My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "It is unsigned," Kellen continued, "because the device failed the extended stress test." The silence became heavier. He explained it in clear language, not to humiliate, but to make sure no one could hide behind technical terms. During a long power loss, the battery heat rose too quickly. After repeated emergency cycling, the alert delay increased beyond safe limits. The issue was fixable. The redesign was possible. But launching before repair would put pressure on hospitals and risk patients who had no idea a boardroom had chosen speed over safety. My father finally found his voice. "That is an internal testing discussion." Kellen looked at him. "It became more than a discussion when your executives pressured my team to approve before corrections were complete." He pulled another page from the case. "These are the emails." He did not read them all. He did not need to. He read one sentence from an executive at Vance Meridian. "Northlake does not need to know about delays if final approval lands before the retirement announcement." Brenner Holt's expression went cold. My father turned toward him quickly. "Brenner, this is being taken out of context." Brenner did not sit down. "Patient safety is not a branding problem, Sterling." The words landed with the force of a door closing. My mother gripped the edge of the podium. Holland's confident posture had collapsed into something smaller, more frightened. For the first time that night, no one was looking at me like I was the embarrassment. But Kellen was not done. He reached into the case again and removed a thin folder with my handwriting on the front. My stomach dropped before I knew why. I recognized it. It was a copy of my patient care notes from the family support proposal I had written months earlier. Notes about parents who could not understand device alarms. Notes about children scared by harsh sounds. Notes about instructions written for engineers instead of exhausted families. Notes about how emergency equipment should be designed with real hospital rooms in mind, not only perfect demonstration spaces. I had shared parts of that proposal with Holland once, stupidly, because she asked what I was working on, and I still wanted to believe my sister cared. Kellen held up another document. Holland's marketing campaign for the Meridian Pulse Cart. Same language, same emotional structure, same phrases polished and placed under the company logo. Innovation with heart, built for the families behind the patient, designed for the longest night. Those were my words. I could not move. For years, I thought my family simply ignored my work. Now I understood something worse. They had listened just enough to steal from it. Holland stepped forward. "That is ridiculous. Marketing uses common language." Kellen turned a page. "This paragraph appears in Elora's original proposal, time-stamped 12 weeks before your campaign draft. So does this one. So does the patient concern about alarm delay. So does the note about parents needing readable side panels." He looked directly at my sister. "You called her work small. Then you used her words because your product sounded empty without them." Holland's face went white, then red. "I was trying to help the company." "No," Kellen said. You were trying to sell compassion without practicing it. That sentence broke something in the room, not loudly, quietly, the way truth breaks things when everyone knows it has nowhere else to go. I do not remember deciding to stand. One moment I was at table 16 near the coat room, and the next I was walking toward the stage. My legs were shaking, but I kept moving. Kellen saw me coming and stepped aside before I reached him. That mattered. He had defended me, but he did not take my voice. He made space for it. I stood in front of the microphone, looking out at my father's guests, my mother's friends, my sister's admirers, and all the people who had laughed when I was too hurt to speak. My mouth was dry, my hands were cold, but my voice, when it came, was steady. For years, I said, I thought I was the weak daughter because I could not talk about profit margins and contracts the way Holland could. My father closed his eyes. My mother whispered my name, but I kept going. Tonight I understand something. I was never weak. I was inconvenient. The room stayed silent. I turned toward my father first. You ignored every warning because it came from me. If Holland had said patients were confused by the panels, you would have called it strategy. If a buyer had said families were scared by alarm sounds, you would have called it market research. But when I said it, it was feelings. My father's face tightened, but he did not interrupt. I looked at my mother. You turned my compassion into a punchline because you never respected anything that did not impress your friends. Tears filled her eyes, but I could not tell if they were for me or for the room watching her. Then I looked at Holland. That hurt the most. You used my words, then laughed at my life. You took the part of me you could sell and mocked the rest. Holland's lips trembled. Elora, I did not think. No, I said. You did think. You thought I would never matter enough to notice. I took a breath, and with that breath, years of swallowed shame seemed to loosen in my chest. I will not shrink myself so this family can feel taller, I said. I will not sit near coat rooms and service doors while you call it seating. I will not smile while you turn my husband into a joke. And I will not let you decide that my work only matters when it helps your company make money. My father took one step forward. Elora, this has gone too far. I looked at him and finally saw a man who was not bigger than me. He was just louder. No, Dad, I said. It went too far years ago. Tonight is just the first time everyone else can see it. I turned back to the room. Respect is not something you give me after you discover my husband is powerful. Respect was owed before you knew his name. For a moment, no one moved. Then Brenner Holt walked toward the stage, not dramatic, not angry, just official. He looked at my father, then at Kellen, then at the guests. Northlake Medical Network will pause all contract movement until the safety concerns are corrected and independently reviewed, he said. We will also require a full review of all patient-facing claims in the current campaign. My father's retirement smile was gone completely. The photographers had lowered their cameras. The board members were whispering to each other. Holland looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. My father turned to Kellen, suddenly softer, suddenly desperate. We can discuss this privately. We can correct the issue. There is no need to damage decades of work. Kellen closed the case. Private is where you tried to hide things, he said. Safety needs daylight. Then he looked at me, not asking permission to lead, only asking if I was ready to leave. I was. We walked out together through a ballroom so quiet I could hear my own shoes on the polished floor. No one stopped us. My mother said my name once, but she did not follow. My father was surrounded by board members before we reached the doors. Holland stood frozen near the stage, still holding her champagne glass, though her hand was shaking so badly I thought it might fall. In the elevator, I pressed my back against the wall and finally started crying. Not pretty tears, not quiet tears, the kind that come from a place you have been locking for too long. Kellen set the case down and pulled me into his arms. "I am sorry I waited," he said. I shook my head against his chest. "I am not." My voice broke. "Tonight I finally heard myself." He held me tighter, and for the first time that evening, I felt the ground under my feet again. The fallout began before we even got home. My phone lit up with messages from my mother, my father, Holland, 2 cousins, and 1 aunt, who had never once called me on my birthday, but suddenly wanted to know if I was okay. My mother left a voicemail saying the joke had been misunderstood. My father sent a message asking if Kellen would meet him privately on Monday morning before outside parties formed the wrong impression. Holland sent the longest message. She wrote, "You ruined Dad's last night. You could have handled this like an adult instead of making it public." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I replied with the only words I would send her for weeks. "No. You built a celebration on top of a lie." After that, I turned my phone off. Kellen and I sat on the kitchen floor in our apartment, still dressed for the dinner, eating cold leftover noodles because neither of us had touched the food at the hotel. It was the strangest meal of my life, and somehow one of the most peaceful. Over the next few days, everything my father had tried to control slipped out of his hands. Northlake paused the contract. The hospital network requested independent review. 2 smaller buyers asked for updated safety documentation. The campaign featuring Holland's stolen language was pulled from the company website. Holland's larger role announcement, the one that was supposed to crown her as the future of Vance Meridian, was delayed indefinitely. My father's board did not remove him, but they did something worse for a man like Sterling Vance. They stopped trusting his judgment. My mother kept calling it a family misunderstanding until one of her closest friends asked why a misunderstanding needed a safety review. That was when she stopped leaving long voicemails and started sending short texts. "Please call me. We love you. Your father is under terrible stress." Not once did she write, "I am sorry I laughed at you." Not at first. The call that mattered came from Inez Calder, a retired nurse who had mentored me at the hospital for years. Inez had silver hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of voice that could calm a screaming waiting room without raising volume. She had heard a careful version of what happened through someone at Northlake. "Baby," she said, "I heard you finally stopped letting them make you small." I cried the second she said it. I told her I did not feel brave. I felt tired. She laughed gently. Most brave things are done by tired people who finally run out of room for fear. I told her about the stolen notes, about Holland, about the way my father looked at me only after Kellen revealed who he was. Inez was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Some people do not recognize gold unless it is locked in a bank. That does not make it less gold." That sentence stayed with me longer than any apology my family tried to offer. 3 weeks after the dinner, I agreed to meet my parents. Not at their house, not at a private club, not at a restaurant where my mother could perform and my father could pay the bill like money-settled emotion. I told them they could meet me at the hospital, in the family waiting room outside the rehab wing. If they wanted to talk about my life, they could step into it. They arrived looking uncomfortable. My father wore a simple sweater instead of a suit. My mother wore no pearls. For once, they looked less like a couple from a company portrait and more like 2 people who did not know what to do with silence. We sat around a small table where children had scratched crayon marks into the surface. Behind us, a little boy in leg braces moved slowly down the hallway with a therapist beside him. My mother watched him, and something in her face changed. Maybe it was real. Maybe I only wanted it to be. My father spoke first. "Elora, we wanted more for you." I had expected that sentence, but it still hurt. I folded my hands and kept my voice even. "No, you wanted something easier to brag about." He looked down. My mother inhaled sharply, but she did not defend him. "We did not understand your work," she said. "You did not try," I answered. "There is a difference." My father nodded slowly, and for the first time in my life, he did not argue his way around the truth. "I am sorry," he said. The words sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. For the dinner, for the jokes, for not listening. My mother wiped under her eye. "I am sorry for making you feel like compassion was embarrassing." I looked at both of them, searching for the performance, the angle, the hidden business request. Maybe it was there, maybe it was not. But I had changed. I did not need to solve their hearts in one conversation. "I am not asking you to understand my whole life in one day," I said. "I am asking you to stop insulting what you never tried to understand. You can be in my life only if respect comes first. Not business, not image, not Kellen's status. Respect." My father swallowed. "And Kellen?" he asked carefully. I knew what he wanted. Access, a meeting, a path back to the contract. I shook my head. "Kellen is not a bridge you can use to reach your deal. If your company fixes the device, Rookline will review it like any other company. If you want a relationship with me, leave business out of it." My father looked ashamed, and this time I let him sit with it. My mother reached across the table, but she stopped before touching my hand. She was learning, maybe, or beginning to. "Can we try?" she asked. I looked down the hallway at the children, the parents, the nurses, the world I had built without their applause. "You can try," I said, "but I am done begging." A month later, the hospital opened the new family support room. Rookline Safety Labs funded it quietly, without a press event and without my father's company logo anywhere near it. The room had soft chairs, clear device guides written in plain English, a quiet corner for overwhelmed parents, chargers, blankets, and a wall where children could draw while adults had hard conversations. A small sign near the door read, "The Elora Vance family room." I told Kellen it was too much. He said it was not for my ego. It was for every family who needed a place where they were not alone. On opening day, I watched a little girl draw a purple house on the whiteboard while her father read one of the new equipment guides and whispered, "I finally understand this." I had to turn away before anyone saw me cry. Kellen stood beside me, his shoulder warm against mine. "Do you feel different?" he asked. I thought about the retirement dinner, the laughter, the silver case, my mother's face, my father's silence, Holland's stolen words, and the way my own voice sounded when I finally stopped apologizing for existing outside their expectations. "Yes," I said. I finally stopped waiting for people with small hearts to measure my life. Kellen smiled and took my hand. Across the room, Inez Calder was helping a grandmother make coffee, acting like she had not already made 3 nurses cry with her speech about dignity. The little girl at the whiteboard added a sun above her purple house. I looked at the sign by the door again, and this time I did not feel embarrassed. I felt steady. My parents still have a long way to go. My father's company is redesigning the Meridian Pulse Cart. Holland was moved off the campaign and, according to my mother, is reflecting, which probably means she is angry but quieter. My mother has visited the hospital twice. The first time, she brought expensive flowers, which we could not accept because of allergy rules. The second time, she brought coloring books and asked where to put them. That was better. I am not pretending everything healed overnight. It did not. Some wounds do not close just because someone finally notices the blood. But I am no longer standing in front of my family asking them to decide whether I matter. I know I do. Kellen knew before they did. My patients knew. Inez knew. And now, finally, I know too. The people who truly love you do not need proof that you matter. They do not wait for a title, a company, a contract, or a public reveal. They see your value before the world claps for it. And if someone only respects you after they discover power standing beside you, that is not respect. That is calculation. I spent years trying to become the kind of daughter my parents could proudly introduce. Now I am learning to be the kind of woman I can proudly live with. If this touched you, please subscribe for more emotional family dramas. And tell me honestly in the comments, if you were in my place, would you forgive them, or would you make them earn every step back? The end. Commentary, discussion, explanation, and lessons. Now, let's take a step back and talk about what really happened in this story. This was not just about a retirement dinner, a rich family, or a husband revealing his real identity. At the center of this story, we saw something much deeper. We saw a woman who spent years trying to be respected by her own family, even though that family kept measuring her life with the wrong scale. Elora was not lazy. She was not weak. She was not unsuccessful. She simply chose a life that looked different from what her parents wanted to show off. And because her work was based on care, patience, and emotional support, her family treated it like it was less important than contracts, products, money, and public image. This is where the real pain begins. Sometimes people do not hurt us only by shouting or fighting with us. Sometimes they hurt us by making small comments again and again. A joke at dinner, a little laugh in front of guests, a wrong name on a seating card, a bad table near the coat room, a smile that says, "You are not important here." These things may look small from the outside, but when they happen for years, they become heavy. That is exactly what happened to Elora. Her family did not insult her only once. They created a pattern. They made her feel like the less important daughter over and over again, until even silence started to feel normal. And that is one of the strongest points in this story. Elora kept quiet for a long time because she wanted peace. Many people do this in real life. They stay silent because they do not want drama. They let comments pass because they do not want to ruin the evening. They smile because they do not want to be called sensitive. But the problem is this: when disrespect is repeated and nobody stops it, the person doing it starts thinking it is allowed. Silence does not always create peace. Sometimes silence gives disrespect more space to grow. Kellen's character is also very important here. For years, Elora's family thought he was only a machine repairman or some low-level equipment worker. They did not ask real questions. They did not care to know him. They only created a quick label and treated that label as the full truth. This is something we see often. People judge others by clothing, job title, income, car, accent, or social status. They do not ask, "Who is this person really?" They only ask, "How useful does this person look to me?" Kellen was quiet, simple, and humble, so they assumed he had no power. But quiet people are not always powerless. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one carrying the truth. The retirement dinner became the turning point because the disrespect became public. Elora's mother did not just make a private comment. She used a microphone. She turned her daughter's career into a joke. She turned her son-in-law into a punchline. And the room laughed because people often follow the energy of the powerful person in the room. If a rich, respected woman makes a joke, guests may laugh even if the joke is cruel. That moment showed the true face of the family. They were not simply confused about Elora's life. They were comfortable humiliating her. When Kellen stood up, the most powerful thing was not that he was rich or successful. The powerful thing was his control. He did not scream. He did not insult them back. He did not try to look bigger than everyone. He simply brought the truth into the light. That is why the scene worked. Real strength does not always need noise. Sometimes the strongest response is calm, clear, and impossible to deny. Kellen's line about not letting them laugh at Elora's work showed that he was not standing up because of his ego. He was standing up because he loved his wife and respected the work that her own family refused to respect. Now let's discuss the first big reveal. Kellen was not the toolbox man. He was the founder and chief safety designer of Rookline Safety Labs. This changed the room instantly because the same people who laughed at him suddenly realized they had misjudged him. But the deeper lesson is not, be careful, because the person you mock might be rich. That is too simple. The deeper lesson is this: you should not mock anyone, even if they are not rich, powerful, or famous. If Kellen had really been a repair technician, the family's behavior would still have been wrong. Respect should not depend on someone's hidden status. Respect should be basic. The second reveal made the story even stronger. Kellen's company was holding the final safety approval for Sterling's biggest product deal. This means the man Sterling dismissed was actually connected to the future of his company. But again, the story does not use this only for revenge. It connects the reveal to patient safety. The Meridian Pulse Cart had a serious issue. It needed redesign. Sterling's company wanted approval fast because the retirement dinner was part of the public image. This shows a dangerous mindset. When image becomes more important than responsibility, people can get hurt. In a business meeting, a delay may look like a problem. But in a hospital room, a delay in safety can become someone's real pain. That line is important because it reminds us that behind every product, every policy, every decision, there are real human beings. Elora understood that because she worked with families every day. Her father did not understand it fully because he lived in contracts and speeches. Holland did not understand it because she looked at patient emotions as marketing language. This is why Elora's work mattered so much. She was close to the people the company claimed to serve. She saw the fear, the confusion, and the needs that executives often ignore. The third reveal was the emotional knife of the story. Holland used Elora's patient care notes in the company's marketing campaign. This was not just professional theft. It was personal betrayal. Holland mocked Elora's life, but she still used Elora's words when those words became useful. That is a very painful kind of disrespect. It says, "I do not respect you as a person, but I will take the part of you that benefits me." This happens in many forms. People ignore someone's ideas until a more powerful person repeats them. People laugh at someone's kindness, then use that kindness to look good. People dismiss emotional labor, then depend on it when they need comfort, trust, or public sympathy. Elora's speech was the real emotional climax. Kellen revealed the truth, but Elora had to claim her own voice. This is important. If Kellen had spoken for her the whole time, the story would become only about a powerful husband saving his wife. But that is not the real message. The real message is that support can help you stand, but you still have to speak. Kellen created space for Elora. He defended her dignity. Then he stepped aside and let her speak for herself. That is a healthy kind of love. He did not control her moment. He protected it. When Elora said, "I was never weak. I was inconvenient," that line explained her whole life. Her family called her weak because her values made them uncomfortable. She cared about patients, families, and safety. She saw the human cost behind business choices. That made her inconvenient to people who wanted everything polished and profitable. Many people are called weak when they are actually honest. Many people are called dramatic when they are actually telling the truth. Many people are called sensitive when they are actually noticing what others want to ignore. Another strong moment was when Elora said respect was owed before her family knew Kellen's name. This is one of the biggest lessons. If people only respect you after they discover money, power, or status around you, then their respect is not pure. It is calculation. They are not seeing your worth. They are seeing your usefulness. Elora understood that clearly at the dinner. Her parents were shocked by Kellen's position, but that did not erase the years of disrespect. A reveal can expose people, but it cannot automatically heal what they broke. Now let's talk about Sterling. He is not written as a cartoon villain. He is a father who built a company, worked hard, and probably believed he was doing what successful people do. But he confused success with superiority. He thought his business world was more important than Elora's hospital world. He praised Holland because her achievements made him look good. He dismissed Elora because her achievements were not easy to present at a rich dinner. This is a common mistake in families. Parents sometimes respect the child who reflects their own dreams and ignore the child who chose a different path. But a child is not a trophy. A child is a person. Marceline, the mother, shows another kind of harm. Her cruelty comes through polite words. She uses jokes, smiles, and social charm. That can be harder to fight because if Elora reacts, Marceline can say, "I was only joking." But jokes can still be weapons. A joke that humiliates someone in public is not harmless. A joke that makes one person small so others can laugh is not love. It is control wearing a pretty dress. Holland's role is also meaningful. She is the golden child, but she is not secure. If she were truly confident, she would not need to mock Elora. Her insults show fear and competition. She wants to be seen as the successful daughter, so Elora's quiet moral strength becomes a threat. That is why she steals Elora's words. She wants the warmth of Elora's work without giving Elora respect. This tells us that jealousy does not always look like open hatred. Sometimes jealousy looks like copying someone while laughing at them. The aftermath was realistic because everything did not magically fix overnight. The contract paused. The campaign got pulled. Holland faced consequences. The father's image was damaged. But Elora did not suddenly become happy just because the truth came out. Real healing takes time. Public validation can feel powerful, but it does not erase years of pain in one night. That is why the hospital meeting was important. Elora chose the location. She brought her parents into her world. That was a quiet power move, not revenge, but boundary. She was saying, "If you want to understand me, you cannot keep meeting me only in places where you feel powerful." Her response to her father was one of the most honest lines in the whole story. "You wanted something easier to brag about." That is exactly what many people experience. Their family may say, "We wanted more for you," but sometimes what they really mean is, "We wanted something that made us look better." Elora did not reject success. She rejected a narrow definition of success. She had built a meaningful life. She helped real people. She loved deeply. She worked with purpose. That is success too. The ending with the Elora Vance family room gives the story a softer but powerful close. It shows that Elora's work was not small. It became a real place of comfort and clarity for families. But the room was not important because her name was on the sign. It was important because it served people. That is the difference between Elora's values and her family's old values. Her father wanted his name attached to legacy. Elora wanted her work attached to help. So what can we learn from this story? First, never measure a person's worth only by job title, money, or social image. Some of the most important work in the world does not look glamorous. Care work, support work, safety work, emotional labor, patient advocacy, teaching, caregiving, and honest service are often underappreciated, but they hold people together. Second, do not let repeated disrespect become normal. If someone keeps insulting you in small ways, it is still disrespect. You do not have to explode, but you do need boundaries. Peace that requires you to stay small is not real peace. Third, quiet people should not be underestimated. Kellen did not need to brag to be valuable. His humility made the family misjudge him, but it also showed his character. He did not reveal himself to impress them. He revealed himself when their cruelty crossed a line. Fourth, love should create space for your voice. Kellen supported Elora, but he did not take over her identity. He defended her, then let her speak. That is a beautiful lesson about partnership. A good partner does not make you dependent on their power. A good partner helps you remember your own. Fifth, real accountability is not just saying sorry. Elora did not accept easy apologies. She asked for respect, changed behavior, and no business manipulation. That is mature. Forgiveness, if it comes, should not mean going back to the same pain. It should come with change. And finally, the biggest lesson is this: the people who truly love you should not need a public reveal to respect you. They should not need proof that you matter. They should not need to see power standing beside you before they treat you with dignity. Your worth is already there, even if your family does not see it, even if your work is quiet, even if your life does not look impressive to people who only understand status. Elora's victory was not just that her father's deal was paused. It was not just that Holland got exposed. It was not even that Kellen revealed who he really was. Her real victory was that she stopped waiting for people with small hearts to measure her life. She finally understood that she did not need their applause to be valuable. And that is the message we should carry from this story. Do not shrink yourself to fit into someone else's narrow idea of success. If your work is honest, if your love is real, if your life has meaning, then you do not need cruel people to approve it before it becomes worthy.